So the last thing we want to cover this week is a little bit out of the ordinary for kind of what we would normally cover. It's not a news story that broke this week, and it doesn't come from a major publication, but it's something that came across on Medium, and it was published a little before last year. But Garrett, you put this in our kind of group chat for the team. What struck to you about it?
So basically what it is, it's this article that I stumbled across called "Want Your Children to Survive the Future? Send Them to Art School." And the article isn't really about art school like it sounds, but really what the topic is about is the skill set that's going to be changing in the employment market over the coming decades. So basically the idea is that, as technology develops, manual labor and kind of easier jobs are going to become less and less common as technology replaces those. And if we take this out a few decades, there's going to be less jobs available for people. So the idea is, what can you do to make your kids still have job security in a world where there aren't as many jobs or jobs might not be needed?
Yeah, one of the first lines in the article is, can you imagine a world where most jobs are obsolete? This resonates with me because I experienced this growing up and going into college. My parents, gave me a lot of guidance in kind of how to navigate everything that was college and how to pick your major and figure out what you wanted to do. And the goal was always to find something practical that people would, a lot of people would want to employ you for. Business, communications, these are things that a lot of different companies need to hire for. And so as such, you have job security. But this article makes the argument that a lot of the jobs that we currently have are going to be obsolete. And so while, business, people who are getting business majors and communications majors are still going to get jobs, art school is not out of the question anymore. And when I see that, I think of it in the context of, we now are beginning to live in a world where people could explore their weird curiosities, and it is still not only going to be beneficial to society, but somebody will want to employ them for that.
Yeah, basically the idea, the reason it's saying you should send your kids to art school is because what they'll get there is not a practical skill, but a creative mindset. And a creative mindset is going to be one of the last things, if it even comes, that we would be able to outsource to technology. So, you brought up a good point where you look at generations a while back, and everybody went through their education and took, job training for things that were very practical. What is the actual job I'm going to be doing? And it seems like over the last few decades, a lot of it shifted to, instead of just being practical, it was maybe you should do something practical, but you can do something that you would like to enjoy that's creative, as long as you have a fallback that's going to be more practical. And this is something I know I was advised to do going into college. And it looks like the way the world might be going as technology develops is the practical element might not be there anymore. And the only thing we really need to focus on if you want a job is creative skills, which is something that can't be offered by standard schools.
I think this will resonate with you because, Garrett, you're an audio producer.
Yeah.
One of the lines stuck out to me as a great metaphor for kind of what this is. It's hard to justify using a massive workforce of recording engineers, media manufacturers, distributors, talent scouts to accomplish the task that a musician can now do by herself in an afternoon with a laptop.
It's very true. I mean, you look at music back in the early 90s, and in order to do recordings, you had to get lots of musicians in there. They go into these studios that cost, they were multi-million-dollar studios where you're paying an engineer hundreds of dollars an hour, and you'd work at it for months and months, and you'd finally put out an album, and it would go through this big record label. And the way things are now, you can pretty much sit at home in your bedroom with a couple $1,000s worth of gear and turn out the stuff yourself. And it's fascinating how technology has really changed the jobs. One area that I actually see this a lot is I'm a drummer, and I do a lot of studio drum recording. And the way that would have used to work was you'd be in person in a recording studio working with a band. Now I work all over the world with bands in Australia and bands in Ireland and bands in all over the United States doing things digitally because that technology is available to me now. So the way that I survived wasn't the practical skills, it's that I found a creative market that technology allowed me to work with.
I think really the underlying message of the article was that while we are seeing this kind of trend towards automation and skilled worker jobs not always being as necessary anymore, the point is that you should never be dissuading your children from pursuing something they're interested in. Because I think that's why we got this to this point in the first place, is that you had this whole creative community that has been interested in this, in the arts for forever. And, for a while we got very critical of the arts and were encouraging people to, get degrees that were more quote unquote practical. Right. And, that STEM is not important, because it is. Mm-hmm. And it's not also to say that the arts are not important, because they are. But I think the message is that the analytical, critical thinking, just kind of general skills that you get from those types of degrees are valuable. And I think people are starting to see that.
I feel like we're finally at a point where we can see what the next 10, 20, 30 years looks like. I think we're...
Really? You think so?
I think we have a taste of it.
I think even more so, no.
I think we have a better understanding of where we're heading in the next 10 to 20 years than 20 years ago people had an understanding of what today was going to look like, right? I think before the internet comes around, before it becomes a mainstream thing, everything is so vastly different. Technology, communications move at just such a slower pace in a pre-internet world. I don't think you could have even begun to envision what the internet would do to the world as a whole until it hit mainstream.
But that's exactly the thing, is it's hard to conceptualize before it comes around. Yeah. Yes, the internet's huge, but we don't know what's going to come about because of what the internet
And that's what I'm saying, is I think the argument that you're making right now could be made against you as well, because things are developing so fast that things in 10 years could look even more so different than they've been looking, recently, because we're at a point where things are just developing so fast.
Let me clarify. I'm not trying to say that you can predict what's going to happen in 10 years, but I think there is a level of credit that needs to be given to generations older than us, our parents, because there's no way you could have even begun to predict what was going to happen in order to give us this advice. I think this is the right advice, and going into the future, this is it's very clear.
Their advice wasn't wrong. We just we rode that wave, and now we're kind of coming back down. But no, I just think in general that I think that's maybe this article is kind of hinting at, is that those skills are so transferable over so many different types of careers and life skills that that I think this article is saying it doesn't really matter, where exactly, even if we don't really know where we're going, in the next 10 years, because we've kind of come back around to realizing that these skills and these, kind of things that you learn from these types of degrees and educations, or whatever it is, that they transfer to so many different things. And so it's not, you're not going to school just to learn how to do this or just how to do this. It's the kind of overall, you're learning the skill set that you can take to more than one place.
Yeah, you're learning a set of skills that help you become a lot more adaptable to the situation you're in.
It almost doesn't matter what happens with the market or what technological changes come. You're going to be able to surpass that because you're going to be adaptable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so to me, this is not to say that, if you aren't creative, if you don't feel like you're someone who can sing or draw or dance or any of the arts, that you understand math and science and that kind of stuff. Like you were saying earlier, Rob, STEM still is completely important. I think the art side hasn't had an opportunity like they're going to have in terms of being able to contribute to society and be employable by a large range of companies.
Well, and it's also the idea that the skills that you learn in an art type setting might actually transfer to be the new practical skills in a world where information isn't what's valuable anymore.
Right.
Because we can all jump on the internet and get information. Now, actually, another big thing that this article kind of touched on was the idea that there will not be as many jobs available in the future as technology progresses. And I've kind of looked at different articles that have talked about this, and there's a lot of mixed thoughts on this, where some people think that this could end up being a very bad thing where we won't have that many jobs left. And there's a lot of other people
a job shortage,
yeah. But there's a lot of other people that see that it could actually be a very good thing, because we will have technology doing a lot of things for us, which frees us up to either enjoy life more, or
we're going to become like the Wall-E movie where we all just
Exactly.
roll around on little chairs because we don't need jobs anymore. Everything's so automated that we don't have to buy anything.
So that's the pessimistic view right there. There's also the optimistic view that we don't have to do anything and we can just lounge around on the beach all day, which sounds awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like we can't unpack this in a weekly podcast, but I think there's a conversation that needs to be had in terms of the biggest problems we face right now. How do we solve those problems without completely polarizing everybody involved? How do we solve those problems and acknowledge the concerns that every party involved has so that we can get past those into the problems like what happens when we don't have enough jobs for our entire society?
Yeah.
That's a scenario
This
where
is unemployment at like a 90 or 95% scale.
Okay, I think that's a little far-fetched. I think that's very far away. But the point where self-driving cars have taken jobs away from truckers, have taken jobs away from people who drive taxis and Ubers and Lyfts, from people who drive buses. I mean, the entire transportation industry loses a lot of jobs because of automized cars. What do you do with those people? What are those people able to do? Where do they go find new jobs at when that's all they've done for 30 years?
They have or they will.
Automated cars are going to be a thing within the next 5 to 10 years.
Will be a thing.
Will be.
Okay, yeah.
From everything I've been seeing that has been unfolding in technology over the last couple months, automated cars will be available for purchase within the next 5 years. And I would say that there are people that are alive today that will never be allowed to have a license because it'll be too dangerous for them to drive. Automated cars will penetrate the market so much. Everybody will have an automated car. You'll be dangerous to be driving on your own.
Oh, in 60 years, that's definitely what it'll be. There won't be.
I think it's going to happen faster
regular
than that.
cars back.
We're going to be
on the road.
outlawing regular cars.
I think that happens in the next 10 to 20 years, not 60.
That's going to be one of those things that, as us Echoboomers of the millennial generation get older, we're going to talk to our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and say, I remember when I actually drove my car.
I had a really cool first car. I loved my first car. It was an old truck. And if I don't get to rebuy that when I'm older and having a midlife crisis and drive it, I'm going to
You're
cry.
running out of time.
You might be able to buy it, but you probably have to have like a special permit to even own it and keep it
and
in
you'll
your
only be able to-
garage.
Only drive it on your own little like property
Yeah,
or something.
you'll have like
that.
specific tracks you are going to be allowed to drive it on. Yeah.
But I bet it'll be the kind of thing too where there might be places you could go, kind of like a bowling alley or a gun range where you can go to actually drive your manual
The
cars.
relics.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's nice to see that we're kind of getting back around to this point, this place of letting people explore things that they're interested in, and not being pigeonholed because we're trying to connect to the job market. Like we're actually just letting people do things that they want to do. And as someone who's education being my kind of thing, this is good. And we're already seeing this in schools. We're already getting to the point where we want to let kids learn the way that they want to learn, and we're trying to really adapt our curriculum and our instruction to the different ways that children learn and to the ways that build those skill sets that are going to end up being, we're getting there already. We're already starting to do this, and it's nice to see that this is all kind of coming back. I think we're finally starting to get it right again.
Well, and I think it's not just about, kind of these options being available. We talked about it a little bit in the episode 0 when we were talking about like the concept of Echoboomers. The world has never been stable enough for this to be a thing, for us to have these kinds of conversations. 40, 50 years ago, we were trying to figure out how not to go to war with the entire world. Now we're having conversations about what weird career do you want to pick today because, there will be value in it.
It's a good time to be alive.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's truly incredible.